We are now live.
Thank you, Nicole. Good afternoon and welcome. I'd like to call to order the June 28th, 2023 City of Asheville Multimodal Transportation Commission meeting. My name is Dennis Wenzel and I am the chair of this group. We continue to hold our meetings virtually, but there are many ways for interested parties to participate in this gathering. The City of Asheville's engagement hub, which includes a variety of links and phone numbers, can be found on the Multimodal Transportation Commission page of the City of Asheville's website. Visiting this page is the best way for you to get your ideas and comments to be a part of this meeting. Members, staff, and guests, please remember to keep your microphones muted at all times when you're not speaking so we can minimize feedback and other background noises. I would like to now welcome our commission members. Members, when I call your name, please introduce yourself and let us know what interest you represent. Randy Warren.
Hey, thanks, Dennis. I'm Randy Warren, and we're bicycle and pedestrian interest. Let's go with that for right now. Thanks.
Hey, Randy. Kenny Armstrong. Kenny is not able to join us today. Jack Eigelman.
I am Jack Eigelman, and I'm at large, represent all interests.
Hey, Jack. Leanna Joyner.
Leanna Joyner. I represent the Greenway/Active Transportation Committee.
All in flex. Hey, Leanna. Bill Loftus.
Bill Loftus here, Transit Committee.
Hey, Bill. Joe Chesler.
Yeah, Joe Chesler, resident of West Asheville, on the Transit Committee liaison.
Hey, Joe. Elise Mauder.
Hi, I'm Elise Martyr. I am also a West Asheville resident, and I represent pedestrian and greenway interests.
Hey, Elise. And our newest at-large member, Joseph Baker. Excuse me.
Yep, it's Barker.
Oh, gotcha.
Hi, everybody. Joseph Barker. I live in East Asheville. Excited to be here. I'm a traffic engineer by trade for the last 12 years with a lot of focus on active transportation and placemaking. From New Orleans, my husband and I moved here last year, and we're excited to put down permanent roots here.
Excellent. Welcome, Joseph. Okay, Joe Archibald.
Good afternoon, everyone. Joe Archibald. I am the chair of the city's Planning and Zoning Commission, and I am the liaison to Multimodal from that commission. I also am an active bicyclist and pedestrian.
Hey, Joe. Elizabeth Likas. I don't think I've seen Elizabeth join quite yet. I'm sure she'll be here in a moment. And Maggie Ullman. Maggie's not here quite yet, but I'm sure they're all racing to be a part of this thrilling meeting. Okay, coming up next, we will move on to our, let's see, the agenda. Review and approve today's agenda, June 28th, 2023. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Hey, Leanna, thank you. And can I get a second?
I'll second.
Joe with a second. Any comments or questions? All right, we will move to approve today's agenda. Roll call, Randy Warren.
Aye.
Jack Eigelman.
Aye.
Leanna Joyner.
Aye.
Bill Loftus.
Aye.
Joe Chesler.
Aye.
Elise Marauder.
Aye.
Joseph Barker.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. Next item is to review and approve our minutes from the May 24th meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Randy. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Elise. Any comments or questions? All right, roll call vote. Randy Warren.
Aye.
Jack Eigelman.
Aye.
Leanna Joyner. Sorry.
Aye.
Bill Loftus.
Aye.
Joe Chesler.
Aye.
Elise Martyr.
Aye.
And Joseph Barker.
Abstain.
Abstain. And I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. We have not received any public comment for the meeting today, so we'll move down to new business. In our new business, first item is to welcome our newest member, Joseph Barker. And Joseph, I feel like you did a very fine introduction, so I'm not going to put you on the spot to add anything else unless there's something else that you wish to add. We're very excited to have you a part of this meeting, and looking forward to kind of leverage your skills and experience to make the city of Asheville even a better place to live.
Happy to be here.
Okay. The next item is to consider removal of Philip Lucero from the Transit Committee. Jessica?
Hi, thank you. So whenever we have a member of one of the multimodal subcommittees that the subcommittee has requested that they be removed, it has to be approved by the Multimodal Commission. And unfortunately, there is a member who joined the Transit Committee but then never attended any of the meetings. And this becomes a problem when we're trying to have quorum. So at the Multimodal Commission meeting, I think it was this recent month, they requested that the MMTC consider the removal, and the gentleman's name is Philip Lucero. So we have proposed a motion for you guys to consider removal of Mr. Lucero from the committee.
Thanks, Jessica. And just for a little bit more background, there's been multiple efforts to reach out with every channel available. There's just has been no feedback, and we do certainly welcome Philip's interest in the future when he may have some time to be a part of the group again in the future. He can certainly reapply at that time. Are there any comments or questions? Joe.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Jessica. I just wanted to amplify. This was an informal request from the Transit Committee, not the MMTC, as you said. But regardless, just so everyone knows, we did not have a quorum the last two meetings, and so it was felt it will be helpful to forward this to the MMTC as an informal action, which has been accomplished. And as you said, Dennis, we did reach out a couple of times to Philip without success. And so by all means, this is not a punitive action. It is simply a policy we want to adhere to. Thanks, both of you.
Absolutely. Okay, looks like there is a suggested motion. Can we get a motion? Anyone want to make that motion?
I'd be happy to make the motion that the Multimodal Commission requests the removal of Philip Lucero from our commission, which is the representative to the Transit Committee. It's not exactly as stated here, but it's a little confusing. You want me to read it as presented here?
Yeah, in that motion, just from the approve, I think is a good place.
I approve the Transit Committee request to remove Philip Lucero from the committee.
Excellent.
Okay.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Any comments or questions? All right, without comment, we'll go through a roll call. Randy Warren.
Aye.
Jack Eigelman.
Aye.
Leanna Joyner.
Aye.
Bill Loftus.
Aye.
Joe Chesler.
Aye.
Billy Smarter.
Aye.
And Joseph Parker.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to, let's see, unfinished business. The first item we have there is an update on the Asheville unpaved project. Jessica. Oh, Lucy.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, let me just get this presentation up. Thank you for your time today. I'm going to give you an update on the Asheville unpaved efforts that we've been doing with the Asheville Unpaved Alliance. So Asheville Unpaved is dedicated to seeing the implementation of dirt trails, or a fancy way to call them is natural surface trails. We like the idea because they are cheaper to build than paved greenways and much faster to construct. And when they are built sustainably, which will be what we require from the trail builder, they tend to be more durable and require less frequent maintenance. They will activate publicly controlled lands for better land management. They tend to have lower impact on the areas where you implement them. They are closer access for free trails for all of the people in the city. And it's an opportunity for improved physical and mental health. I also noticed in the many years that I've worked here that people desired them. When we were working on the gap plan in the first survey, we had a number of questions about Asheville unpaved and natural surface trails, and 96% of the people who responded to the survey said that they would very much like or would like to see natural surface trails as part of our Greenway program. And so we did include them as a new typology of the Close the Gap plan. When we started talking about the idea of having natural surface trails in Asheville, a number of nonprofits and groups like runners groups and hiking and biking groups stood up and said that they would love to see it happen. And 3 groups in particular, Asheville on Bikes, Connect Buncombe, and Pisgah Sorba, not only said that they would like to see them done, but that they would help us make them happen. And so for the past 2 years, we've been working with them on what that might look like. And we are getting very close to entering into a use agreement with them that will allow them to raise the money and hire a trail builder to build the trails and manage the trails in the 3 pilot projects that I will show you in a minute. Also install signage and trailheads and wayfinding signs in the trail systems, and keep the trails and the signage maintained for 3 years. So when I said they're cheaper than a regular greenway, I really mean it. Our greenways right now are clocking it at over $4 million a mile to build. And the 3 pilot projects that Asheville Unpaved would like to do combined will be less than $400,000 and will make almost 5 miles of trails. So let me show you which ones they are. The first one is the Coat Branch Trail, and that is located in central Asheville behind Aston Park Tennis Center on Hilliard and behind the Asheville Middle School. This is particularly exciting to the people who are working in Asheville Unpaved because the middle school has a very active and successful after-school bike program that is teaching kids how to ride bikes safely. So having these trails in their backyard would be very beneficial. It's also behind the YWCA, which has a lot of programming that could use the trails as well for kids up to elderly people. The estimated cost to create these trails is $93,000, and it's 0.83 miles of trail. The yellow dotted line in this map, the little yellow dotted line, is the alignment for future Coat Branch Greenway, and the green dotted line are the trails that Asheville Unpaved Alliance is proposing to build. So as you can see, the trail alignment will not interfere with the greenway construction if at any time we find the funding to build that. The next pilot project is Azalea Park. There's really 2 trails that at this time are not connected, but we'll work on that at a later date. It's almost 1.5 miles of trails. One of them is on the east side near the dog park, and it's in the Thomas Wolfe cabin site area, which happens to be a historic site. And the second trail is on the other side, closer to the nature center, and will go on a really beautiful area that is along the Swannanoa River on the other side of the soccer fields over here. And we'll pop up on Gaseous Creek Road where the city has a little parklet with a picnic area. And then the third is in the French Broad River area. It's in the property that the city leases from Duke Energy. We just finished the French Broad River West Greenway section that closed the gap between New Belgium and the French Broad River Park. This one is a little different. It's got the green lines, which signifies the trails that will be used for multi-use hiking and biking, but also a bike purpose-built trail for some more technical bike riding. It is 2.18 miles of trails that are being proposed for less than $150,000. So the city is doing some outreach. We have 3 levels of engagement. The first was to meet with property owners whose backyards met up with our project areas, and we wanted to meet with them first to let them know what we were proposing and to see if they had any questions and concerns. The first group of people were in the Bacote Branch area on Charles Street, which is near the school and the YWCA. And then the people who live on the east side of Klingman Avenue. We also met with the people who lived on the park side of Riverview Drive. That's the east side of the of Riverview Drive. And then the Azalea Park trails, we met with people from the Gaseous Creek Road. And overall, the questions or concerns that we heard most were that they are pretty beaten down by the fact that they live in properties that are managed by the city, but have a lot of problems with homeless camps and crime. And they had concerns that these trails could possibly make it worse. We talked a lot about the fact that when you activate park areas like this that haven't been managed in any way prior to activating the areas with trails, they tend to improve. And I think that most people understood that and became a little less concerned about the idea of these trails coming in their area. And now we're meeting with neighborhood groups. So we can, Iwana, South French Broad, which we did meet with them a couple weeks ago, and letting them know. And then finally, we will be announcing on a citywide level that we're planning to build these trails to seek any kind of further questions and comments. We have a few steps left to do before we are ready to go to council. At Azalea Park, like I said, one of those trails is near the historic Thomas Wolfe Cabin. So we need to go to the Historic Resource Commission for a certificate of appropriateness. We plan to do that in August. We need to get an easement from Asheville City Schools for the Bacote Branch trails that are on their property. A rough timeline for that will be September, since they just have a new superintendent that will be coming in mid-July. So we're giving her a few weeks to settle in before we go over there to talk with them some more about an easement. And then for the French Broad River trails, we do need approval from Duke Energy, the landowner. We do lease the land. Like I said, we have a 99-year lease with them. And in the lease, it is described explicitly that dirt trails are something that they would entertain as an appropriate fit for the property, but we still need to get approval of the alignment. So we're working with Duke Energy on that. And we hope to get all of those things done by September. And a rough guess is that we'll be able to go to council around then for approval. That's the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Elizabeth?
Yeah. Hi, Lucy. Thanks so much. I am excited that we're looking at other less expensive and quicker alternatives to really get some multimodal options around the city. I am curious about these three particular priorities in terms of the third one especially struck me with the French Broad River part, since they had a greenway on one side, then did the greenway on the other side, and now it looks like there's two more dotted lines with so many areas in the city that don't have any greenways or trails. Were there others considered, and how was that one in particular moved to the top of the list given all the work that's been done recently?
Good question. Thank you. Yeah, there has been a lot of discussion. As I said, when we started talking about doing dirt trails as part of our greenway planning, we had a lot of interest, not only from the three groups that have become the Asheville Unpaved Alliance, but also running groups and bike groups, and had at least 3 meetings with them on where potential sites could be. We had, after discussions, we came up with 5 pilot projects throughout the city. These 3 rose to the top primarily because they are lands that are controlled for the most part by the city of Asheville or by a school that works closely with the city of Asheville. The connectivity of them to neighborhoods, and the French Broad River West area has some trails. Actually, they're maintenance roads, but we have seen a lot of activity in that area already on these makeshift trails. So we're trying to improve the situation out there with better built trails and to keep people away from the electric infrastructure that's out there. So we're taking an opportunity, because we lease 40 acres in that area, to maximize the space with as much recreational use as possible.
Ready?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, thanks, Lucy, too, for all the work. And this is a great project that I know that wasn't in the long-term planning not too long ago, and you've done a great job with incorporating it in and having a lot of action on it. So I appreciate all the work you've done on that. So one of the things that makes the regular greenways so expensive is we have to build them out so that emergency vehicles can travel on them, and it costs a lot more infrastructure and that kind of stuff. So, and I know that there's, some access to the people who are traveling on those trails, using those trails, they have emergency vehicles to service them. That same infrastructure isn't in place on the unpaved trails. Is that a concern at all, or how do we deal with the fact that you couldn't drive a fire truck out there to meet somebody if they broke a leg or something like that? Or I'm just wondering how we deal with that kind of situation.
Yeah, this will be a lot like, riding in trails in state parks and Bent Creek and Richmond Hill, however, much more accessible and closer to town. So yeah, you cannot drive an ambulance down there, but you're not very far from a main road or greenway that an ambulance could make their way that far to someone to go into it, evacuate people if they're hurt. The rare instance they will be hurt. Most of these trails are multi-use trails. They're not going to be hardcore bike trails that we expect people to be doing really risky things on. They're going to be more easy to manage. That doesn't mean that someone can't fall and break their leg. I could fall and break my leg right here in my room. But I don't foresee this being a real risk-laden activity.
Joe?
Hey, Lucy, thanks for all this. I remember, I think it was several years back, walking around up there behind the school with Mike talking about this kind of stuff. So I was curious about, more particular, the part at Azalea Park, and wondering, I know that right now is definitely popular with soccer and all that. And I was just curious if there were future plans for more of these types of trails. Also, what potential feedback you had from the neighborhoods, in regards to these trails being done there, what their concerns might be. I look at it as, some of these trails, again, especially Azalea Park, like connecting potentially some of these roads and being able to get from like Swannanoa River Road down to Gashes Creek and maybe up to the backside of Highland one day. And you don't have to go on Swannanoa River Road if you live in one of those neighborhoods. So again, just curious about all that. And I love the idea of these for sure.
Yeah, so we are hoping that these are just the 3 first pilot projects. As I said, we had 5 originally that Asheville Unpaved was willing to take on, and for various reasons, 2 of them have fallen off the immediate implementation list, waiting in the wings maybe for the next round. There's opportunities throughout the city. These, like I said, were 3 easy ones that we just wanted to get our toes in the water. But there's been expressed interest for many others throughout the city in different areas that I think will be much easier for us to implement once we have some trails in the ground, as an example of what Asheville Unpaved can do. With asking about what neighbors' concerns were, the Coat Branch definitely had the most concerns, and it was specifically because of the increase in homeless camps during COVID. And so they've seen a lot of things that have made them unhappy. One of the ones that's most concerning is campfires at night, which makes them concerned for forest fires. And so none of that is anything that we can't agree with. During COVID, things got much worse. The city right now is using ARPA funds to help clean up these areas. The French Broad River West area has the same problems. You can probably see driving down Lyman Street. So we're planning on doing some big cleanups and working on ways to keep the surveillance of the areas in check with various departments doing the work. So we think that all of those concerns will be improved. Another thing that I heard a lot of is concern for wildlife. And on both ends of the spectrum, really, some people were concerned, how can we do this and impact bears and fox and turkeys' homes? But they are not endangered animals. And like I said, these trails are very low impact to the environment. If anything, the bears will probably be happy that there's trails for them to get to the places they're going faster, just like the rest of us. On the other end of the spectrum, people were asking if there were ways to humanely remove the wildlife from the area because they are a problem for them. Like the YWCA has pre-K people and they have to get their 4-year-olds inside once they see a bear. So it's been interesting to hear. Nothing that I didn't expect. Their concerns were valid for sure. And we're hoping that we can minimize the problems even before the trails come in. But once the trails are in, I think we'll find managing those areas much easier.
Elise?
Hi, thank you. I'm really excited to see these projects that are being proposed and finding these little kind of like pockets of nature to create for the people here in Asheville. And I just kind of wanted to share some thoughts that have come up for me looking at the presentation. My first kind of thought when I saw the natural surface trails is that we don't want to rely on these for connectivity from one place to another because of the accessibility component and that they aren't accessible to everybody. So I have heard some people mentioning that it'd be great to see these in places that don't already have trails. And I certainly agree that there are gaps in our system, but I was happy to see that these trails that are being proposed aren't being relied on for some type of connectivity, and instead they're alongside areas that do have trails that are accessible for people with mobility issues and that type of stuff. So I was excited to see that. And also just wanted to share, I like numbers, and you had said that I think the paved greenways are clocking in at around $4 million a mile. Is that right?
Over $4 million. You're right.
Over 4 million. And so I just did some quick math on these, and they're coming out to between $67,000 and $100,000 per mile. It's just to normalize that in case anyone wants to, like, you know, compare apples to apples here as far as the value is concerned. So I think that's a really good use of our funds. And then I do have a question about this, the multi-use and the bike build over at French Broad River West. Am I correct in assuming that that bike built path is kind of like what you might call a pump track, where it's like the dirt mounds that people do the mountain biking stuff?
It's a little different than a pump track, but they are built for the heavier speeds or faster speeds and heavier weights of bikes. So the turns are more fortified and armored and can handle the speeds. And we are building them for a faster bike ride, similar to a pump track, but we won't be manufacturing the things that pump tracks have. And we'll just be taking advantage of the natural topography to make it a more interesting bike ride. But that being said, it is being built that way. We have no way of enforcing it being a bike only trail. So that is that. As far as mobility goes, you're right, these will not be ADA accessible because they're recreational in nature and they're not the primary access to anything. They don't need to meet ADA standards, but adaptive sports groups will completely be able to use these and enjoy them.
Thank you.
Jack?
Hey, Lucy, thanks for taking time to chat about this. It's exciting to see it come together. I have a couple of questions. One, mostly, I love the organizations that are involved with this. I realize that their capacity is limited. So I was wondering if you could lean more into, talk a little bit more about the maintenance plan once the trails are sorted out. And it also seems to me like a great opportunity to develop some community groups to help. I know of a model, but I'm wondering if we could, I wonder if there's a way maybe to lean into that, to really try and encourage community groups to really own these places so they feel excited about what's there. And I wonder also if you could talk just a little bit about some of the signage too. And this is a different question, but some of the signage and connection points at the various greenways and trails. Are there, trailheads? You mentioned signage. So just maybe a little more detail about that.
Okay. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Jack Eigelman works very closely with the Friends of Hominy Creek Greenway, which is an official greenway and probably just recently decided to be a permanent natural surface trail greenway. And they have done a great job being what would be the right word, stewards of the greenway, and have 100% respect for that. So with Asheville Unpaved, we're entering into an agreement just like we have done with Friends of Hominy Creek Greenway. Within agreements, we can't make them last forever. They always have to have a sunset date and they can be renewed. So for example, with Friends of Hominy Creek, their agreements last 3 years and then get renewed and each time go to council for approval. So with this use agreement with the Asheville Unpaved Alliance, we have 3 years of maintenance built into the costs that they're gonna take on. So they'll raise the funds for the maintenance of 3 years. And what that will look like is the trail builder that they use or a contract with another trail builder to do the bulk of the maintenance. There will be opportunities for volunteers to help, but it's just easier to have that one professional trail builder taking charge of the maintenance. After 3 years, we can renew that agreement if they want, or if they don't want to, then the city will either hire the trail builder or contract with Pisgah Sorba to do that role of the maintenance keeper with volunteer opportunities available. So that's how we're rolling out with this Asheville Unpaved Alliance. And then for the signage, that will include trailheads that give information, including the level of difficulty. I don't know if that's what we're going to call it in the end, but similar to ski hills that show you that you're about to enter a green circle or a blue square or a black diamond. Just the symbol will show you that you are going to get into a certain level of an experience, so that you can decide if you are able to do this recreation or not. And within the trails, we'll need to have directional signs and wayfinding signs, so you know that you're heading in the right direction back to your car or the parking lot or whatever. Not that any of these are so long that you could get lost, but we're setting the precedent of what kinds of signs we will have. We're just getting started on the signage work right now, so I don't know what that's going to look like by the time we get it up. But those are the levels of signage we'll have: is trailhead, directional, wayfinding. We'll also have an online presence for information, so people will know where to park, if there's bathroom facilities, if there's trash cans or any other park amenities in the trail experience that they can expect to find. So between all of that, we'll be working with the Asheville Alliance on what they will look like and the content.
Thanks, Lucy.
Joe?
Yeah, Lucy, hi, good to see you. Thank you, great work. I have a question on the French Broad River West proposal, and the bike-only trail itself has that loop at the southern edge. And my question is, was there any discussion of linking that up to Grandview and Riverview at the south end there, so that the trail can be accessed from other than just the Greenway from the north? It would really seem to benefit East West Asheville neighborhood considerably, speaking selfishly, but I can see some advantage of doing that. I can also see some potential issues, but if it's been discussed, I'd like to know what you have to say about that. I think it would be a great advantage to open up other users that may not use it from down below, but could access from up on top of the bluff. What do you think?
Well, it was more problematic than I had thought originally. I was also hoping for a connection up into here, but this right at the top is privately owned, so it's bottlenecked up there, or blocked off, not even bottlenecked. There is an existing maintenance road up there, but we don't want to rely on the Duke's maintenance roads as an official trail. So that might be just a voluntary action of people making that short connection from Grandview or the lower end of Longview or Riverview, sorry. But the other possibility is the spur trail that is on the French Broad River Greenway. So you can get that off of Haywood Road, or starting at the New Belgium end, you can just ride on the Greenway to this midpoint and then hop on the trails.
Great. Any other comments or questions? I have two quick items I wanted to bring up, Lucy. The first one was, I know that you and I had a discussion offline about some folks having not being aware of where they can find all of this information. Can you just repeat again where all of this exists and where it lives on the city's website?
Yeah, if you Google Asheville Unpaved, Asheville, you'll probably come up with the city's project page, which has all the information that I just gave you. And then Asheville on Bikes is also holding their version of Asheville Unpaved, which has a link for fundraising, if you would care to go there. But we try hard to keep our project pages updated with the most current information.
Excellent. And then one final item. I know that folks, we received a great deal of input. That's how this process works, and it's been a couple of years, and it's really kind of starting to come to fruition. I know that we were hearing from some folks specifically about native species and plants. How have we addressed that? Have we brought somebody in? You know, what's our approach to that group?
So we are not required by law to do any kind of environmental studies to be able to provide natural surface trails in areas. And if we had a federal grant, or if we were trying to make connections from one end to a facility, for example, there are a lot of things that would trigger more in-depth need for environmental studies, but they're not required. So I didn't want for the fundraisers to be burdened with the cost of that. The way that trail building works is the trail builders work slowly. So they, for example, only do as much of a trail that they can finish in that day or a couple days. So they're not needing to do a ton of, say, erosion control that a paved greenway would need. Our paved greenways are typically paid for with federal grants and are much more impactful to environment. So we need to do more environmental studies for facilities like that. But because of its low impact and the fact that a professional trail builder is on the lookout for sensitive areas and are able to move the alignment to adjust to those, we did not feel they were necessary.
Excellent, thank you. Jack, do you have a comment?
Oh yeah, Dennis, I just wanted to follow up on that point. I think one of the great benefits of the trails cutting into some of these neglected forested areas is it does bring attention to the public of the very poor shape of these forests, and it also makes them more accessible to people who are interested in maybe doing some of that work. So we should just maybe that's beyond our scope here, but I think a healthier forest means the trails will be easier to maintain. So I just want to reemphasize your point. I think it's really important that we think about that forest restoration in there now that it's part of the transportation corridor.
Excellent, thank you. Well, thank you very much, Lucy. That was awesome. It's great to see these this concept coming along, and we're very excited to see be able to actually get out there and use these trails soon.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for your time.
All right, take care. Okay, the next item is the proposed Active Transportation Committee's preliminary framework. Jessica?
Sure, thank you. And I might defer to you, Dennis, or any of the other folks that have been involved with this conversation. Please feel free to jump in, but we're trying to take the next step toward the merger, consolidation, whatever you want to call it, of the Bike Ped Task Force and the Greenway Committee. And so I think it was back in January or so, or December maybe, where we talked about this, and there was several members of this group that got together to come up with some of the what I'm calling the framework, an outline, if you will, of what this merger might look like. And a number of points were identified. And I think what I'm looking for today is to get consensus from the entire Multimodal Transportation Commission on these handful of points, and that way we can move forward with making it all more formalized, including coming up with the rules of procedure, bylaws, and I think we will have to make a minor change to potentially the Multimodal Commission ordinance. But before we get into all of the more formal paperwork types of things, I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with what I'm calling the major preliminary framework point. So I tried to bullet those out as what has been proposed by the I'll call it the subcommittees that's been talking about this. And those things involve the name, the proposed number of members that there will be, both voting and non-voting, the number of folks from the Multimodal Commission that would be appointed to the new committee, and what the terms would look like. So the terms of those individuals that would be on the commission, on the new committee. And we can go through them one by one if you'd like, and then if there's any changes to any of them, then we can make sure to note that in any motion that you guys feel comfortable with. And we could start with talking about the name. I think this is probably something that I think most folks have already agreed to, but I just would like to get confirmation that we think that the name of the new committee would be the Active Transportation Committee.
Yeah, and just to kind of give a little bit more here, what we were running into as some background for some of the newer folks is we had greenway projects and bike ped projects, and it was really difficult to kind of delineate because those two really are oftentimes the same thing. And so what we were trying to figure out is how we can group these together. And so when I was doing a little bit of research, I found that the Active Transit Committee, that term is being used in several municipalities around the country to kind of talk about this group. And then I think this merger is kind of happening in several places where it doesn't make sense. One of those two buckets doesn't really make sense anymore. And so it's really kind of one bucket, putting them all together. And then, so that's kind of the name, where the name came from. I think, maybe Jessica, you brought it to the group, and then we kind of, talked about a couple of different names, and then just really felt like it kind of fit. It's vague enough, but I think it kind of encompasses kind of everything. And I think it gives the group, or gives this committee an opportunity to grow, as well as other things will kind of pop up in here. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the name portion of this issue?
No, I'm just going to add, I really like the name. I just posted a little definition, but for the public, it's human-powered mobility, such as biking, walking, or rolling. And that sounds great. Like, I think that does kind of capture that dilemma of overlap that you were discussing. So I'm in favor. I'm a fan of the name.
Me too.
Okay. So let's move on to maybe some of the points that might be a little bit more complicated. The subgroup met and talked about the number of members that the committee should be comprised of, and have suggested that there be 9 voting members plus the additional ex officio members. And right now, there are a total of 13 members on both groups combined. So that basically means that 4 people from those combined would need to step off. But I think that's not as difficult as it sounds, because when we talk about the number of folks that would be appointed from the multimodal, if that were to go down from 4 to 2, that's 2 people there. We also have one of the members of the Greenway Committee, Mr. Zukowski. He was just appointed to the Multimodal Commission, but he starts in July, so that's the third one. So I think, and then I've heard that there's one person that's on the bike ped task force that doesn't live in the city, and so right now that's not something that is allowed for committee members. And then ex officio members, there's currently 4, and I'm assuming they are from their ex officio for the Greenway Committee, but I could be wrong. And that's someone from Mountain True, someone from Asheville on Bike, someone from Connect Buncombe, and someone from River Lake. So the proposal is to keep those 4 ex officio representation. So I think right now the important thing is to decide, does 9 voting members sound like a good idea? And then we can further discuss like the specific members if we want to.
And just a tiny bit more background, Jessica. So what we did when we had this discussion, we did talk about expanding it, and we were concerned about not, I feel like we want to make sure that we can still get a quorum to get some things done. So we were concerned about if we expand it out too much, is it too difficult for us to actually still be productive in that way? So it was difficult because we do want to make sure we're including everyone, but we also want to make sure we're productive. So there was a lot of good, healthy discussion back and forth, and we kind of settled on these numbers, which reflect our group, and I believe reflects what's going on existing with Greenways as well. Ready?
Yeah, just real quick, the nature of the bike ped task force too, it was looser because it was a task force, and so people were used to just coming and not necessarily being an official member. So I think that may carry over to the transportation committee too, in terms of like people just coming and being an active participant in the meetings without actually officially being on the board too. So there's just that atmosphere. If it exists already, and it could extend there too, so people don't feel like if they don't want to be actually an official committee member, or they aren't an official committee member, but they still want to have input, they still would feel comfortable coming and showing up and participating in the discussion, which is a little bit different than a lot of the committees we have that are more formalized too, but it might help the transition too.
Definitely. And I think that was the only other, I'm just looking through the notes here, the only other comment was that we wanted to make sure we would reach out to some of the walking groups in town to see if they could be a part, or at least be aware of it and figure out what, how we can interact. So just as long as they know that their input is important to kind of the success of this group going forward. Jack?
Dennis, this might be getting into the weeds a little bit, but I'm still trying to get a handle on this structure. How can you maybe speak to, or anybody, Jessica or anyone on the committee, speak to how the committees, the transit and active transportation, will develop their agendas? Will it be influenced by the multimodal transportation committee, or do they essentially, will they be operating independently? I'm just trying to figure out the sort of structure in the organization of how information moves from one committee to the other, and just how it's all pulled together. I know that Jessica's staff is doing a lot of that work, so I just want to get a better handle on that, if there's any insight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the transit committee and the new active transportation committee would be they would be the subcommittees of the Multimodal Transportation Commission. So we'd be going from 3 subcommittees to 2. And I think when there is something that is, I'll say, policy related, or a motion specific to something that policy related, or like adopting a plan, or something that is maybe needs to go to council, or is, I don't want to say more important, but maybe elevated attention, then that is typically brought from the subcommittee to the multimodal commission. And then in some cases it goes on to council. So I don't know if that answers your question, but generally speaking, the subcommittees, they operate independently of each other, but they are underneath the multimodal commission umbrella. And not every single item that each subcommittee talks about or might make it up to multimodal, but some of those more policy related ones we tend to bring those forward. And it's usually the subcommittee makes a recommendation to bring it forward to multimodal commission for their approval or further input, if that makes sense.
And Jessica, just to kind of tack on, I always feel like it's the healthiest when there's two-way communication going. So I sometimes, I always felt like it was good when there would be something that maybe this group would then take the representatives that were on MMTC going to Greenways would bring something with them for that next meeting, and then the result of that discussion could come back through to us again. So I think that it's healthiest when it's going kind of both ways. Of course, there are ways, we want to make sure we're making ourselves as accessible to the public as possible so we can get their feedback and get the public's input. And so it just gives another opportunity for folks to, be a part of a meeting, to have a discussion, to bring ideas so that we can kind of work them in the committee level and then bring them up to the commission level. And then, as Jessica pointed out, anything that needs to then go further to the council would do so. Elise.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm just looking at the list of ex officio membership that we have, and I'm assuming these are the ex officio members that were of the two groups previously, and we've just put them together. And I'm not sure the full history of when these two subcommittees were initially developed, how many years ago that might have been. But I'm wondering if, and Dennis, you might have been getting to this, if now's like a good opportunity to engage with groups that may have formed since then that have interests in these areas, and like bring in some new representatives from those groups as non-voting members. Is that what you were saying, Dennis, about maybe reaching out to some walking groups?
Yes, definitely. And a part of this conversation that we had was trying to brainstorm what groups who are we not including, who are we not hearing from, and so there were a couple of groups that we wanted to reach out to. I like the idea of having kind of these ex officio members, because you can have a rotating seat to say we are always going to have a pipeline to these folks. But I don't think by any means is it set in stone on what groups are there. And of course, this is we were kind of scraping these pieces up and just saying, okay, this is what it kind of is looking like, and it's starting to look a little bit like a piece of pottery, but not quite there yet. It's still just kind of a clump of clay. So I think that's a great idea. And certainly if there are other groups or anyone is aware of any other groups, we do want to include those folks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Joe?
Yes, thanks, Dennis. Jessica, I'm not trying to confuse everybody, but I don't understand how we get to 9 from the list that you provided here. Could you just quickly summarize that? I see 4 from MNTC. Oh, that's the current makeup. I'm sorry. So how would the voting members be constructed, if you could just summarize that?
So at the end of the day, what we're saying is that we'd have a total of 9 people. And so what we're trying to do is say, let's assume that all 13 members, we have 13 members right now. We need to cut 4 of them. We need to cut 4 of them down. Yeah. So if we decide that there's only going to be 2 representatives of MMTC instead of 4, then you have 2 more to get rid of. Well, I don't like saying get rid of, but you know what I mean. And then there's one person that doesn't live in the city. I don't know who that is. So there's one more person that we would have to volunteer to step off to get to the 9, if that makes sense.
And this is also kind of the first cut here. As I understand it, we have not approached the 2 groups yet with any information because we kind of want to make sure that this group was on board with some, broad structure before we start to, information. And it is about making sure that people are feeling included, but also having a productive group. So as Randy's point of, the task force is more about just kind of showing up and being a part of it. I kind of feel like a lot of that that vibe of what was happening in the task force will continue in this community as well, this committee.
If I could follow up, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So would the balance of the members come from the other 2 current subcommittees? The Green Lake Committee and okay.
Yeah, so that's and see who is interested, and then we can kind of figure out if there very well there may not be any conflict at all, and we have the folks. We might have to find 1 or 2 more folks to come on to be a part of the group. So I think once we have that information, we'll have a better idea of what the next step might need to be. But certainly we want to make sure that anyone that's interested, this is going to be the process. Let's talk and figure out, what our numbers are from there, what the census is.
Great, thank you very much.
Leanna?
I think the proposal looks good. Generally, I did have a question about terms. It seems just from where I'm sitting that it's a little confusing to have existing terms and expiration dates with a new system. Like that just seems rife with like figuring out things later. And I guess I just maybe it's just my lens. But I just wondered if it doesn't make more sense to consider when you launch the new thing, what people have been on, and if there's some sort of rolling expiration that maybe folks are already set up in the sequence of a 3-year term and 2 consecutive terms. Basically, going ahead and slating people based on their tenure within the new structure, if that makes sense. Anyway, just a thought. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but it seems like figuring it out later might cause greater challenge.
Well, I guess maybe we're saying the same things differently, but what I was thinking is let's say that all of the folks that are the 9 people are people that are already on these 2 committees. I was thinking they would just serve their terms that they're in now. So if let's see, who's a good example?
Are they currently 3-year terms or they're variable terms?
Generally, everybody's on a 3-year term unless they've so it's consistent with what every other committee and commission is. Yeah. Does that make sense?
That was my confusion. Yep. I just didn't know if we were dealing with 4-year terms and, things like that. So if at least that's all consistent, that's great.
And Leanna, just a little bit more info here. What we're thinking about with this is just to make sure that we have kind of a natural turnover as the group grows, so that we don't lose we don't want to appoint everyone the first day 1 to these 3-year terms, and in 3 years we lose some folks, and I think we lose some momentum there. Randy?
So just again, the Bike Ped Task Force is a task force, not a committee, so no one's serving on any term there. So the people that will be coming from the Bike Ped Task Force aren't on any expiring terms. They just serve for as long as you want. And then you drop out.
Then. Okay, so then in that case, they're going to have a term.
Sure, yeah, understand. I'm just saying that there's no unfulfilled terms or 2 years left or 1 year left that will come from that group. But I certainly understand that the new group everybody will have a term, but no one will have 1 year left of the term, right now. So.
Yeah, and I kind of see that maybe what we'll do is we end up we split the group in 2 and assign half the group 1.5-year term and half the group 3-year term, just so we can maintain that rotation. Because ideally we have that rotation with each of these groups coming in, so everyone, we kind of have that ability to keep momentum going on all sides of the group. Randy?
Sorry. So yeah, I mean, ideally, I think if we had 9 members, we'd have 3 up for term every year. So then you'd have a nice rotation of people,
Good idea.
Ongoing. That would make it, that'd be good for the, it might be harder to start that way, but once it starts, then it'd be, for example, like I've got 1 more year left of multimodal. So if I was a representative of multimodal, for example, and I was that representative and it would end next year, and I wanted to stay on that committee, then I had to be applying to that committee specifically after that, and it would start again, that way too. But yeah, it'd just be nice to have, 3 new members every year, and instead of having a half turnover or whatever too. It just helps maintain institutional knowledge and also provides new blood every year.
Well, we'll look at, I guess, once we figure out who thinks they still want to do this moving forward, then we'll look at what their terms are, and try to work out what's the best. But ultimately, like what we're looking for is just to establish, like, okay, the term limits are going to be the same as every other group. The first set of members might be a little wonky with their term, but as people, vacate or decide they want to resign, then it'll establish that new term rotation, and we'll try to get it to be like you just said, having those staggered terms.
Excellent.
So it sounds like everybody thinks 9 is fine, and that having the ex officio members carry forward sounds good. And so the next part is related, and that is the number of MMTC representatives that will be on the new committee. So as you know, we've had 2 people appointed to each of the 3. And so the recommendation in this case is to just have 2 people from the multimodal sit on this, the new committee. So that means essentially that 2 people from multimodal will have to not be on the subcommittee any longer. And right now we've got Randy, Kenny, Leanna, and then Mike Zukowski has been on Greenways, but now he's going to be on multimodal. So at some point, and I'm not saying you guys have to do it today, but if you do want to stick with just 2 people on the committee, then you'll have to decide who's going to step back. And it could be that you kind of think about that, and when we come forward with the actual, documents to review and approve, it becomes official at that point.
And
that makes sense.
At-large members are welcome to attend any committee meetings at any time. It's just from the voting perspective that we're talking about here. And the reason, I think, just to give a tiny bit of background, was exactly what we were talking about a moment ago, where if we bring that 4 to 2, it really does open up 2 more seats for folks from the community that can participate. So it really allows us, I think, to extend our reach a little bit more, make sure we're getting as much feedback from the public as possible. And then it'll still roll up through the 2 representatives up to MMTC directly, and then indirectly through minutes and through annual reports and all those types of documents.
Anybody have any questions about that point? Disagree? Agree?
I mean, it seems pretty like an equitable approach. So unless there were a change to the number of transit committee folks represented, I think it's fair. And certainly I think even in the introductions here, as we've experienced, a lot of our general membership is interested in active transportation. So I don't know that, yeah, I think it's just a change in structure, and it seems reasonable.
Yeah, if we kept 4 out of 9, then you're essentially like repeating the multimodal commission. So I think it makes sense. And yeah, so I think those of you that are currently appointed, if you want to think about that, maybe talk amongst yourselves and decide who might be willing to step back or step off, and that would be helpful for staff to kind of have that figured out so that we don't have to make any decisions. And honestly, that was, and then we've already sort of talked about the term. So I think that, Dennis, I think that those were the major points. There's obviously like one of the things we'll also have to come up with is like the purpose statement and the types of items that will be included in the bylaws and whatnot. And so those things we can draft, and we'll probably just pull from the existing document, and we can work with you guys to revise those things. But these were the big things that I wanted to kind of get group consensus on, so that we could start to put the stuff together and move forward.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I would like to have a motion if that's okay, Dennis.
Yeah, that sounds great. Is there any other comments or questions on any of this? And understand that this is still, kind of come together. Its final form could very well change. But without any other comment or question, it looks like we're asking for a motion that is kind of in that bottom bullet point there if someone is interested in making that motion.
I'll move to approve the proposed preliminary framework and direct staff to draft the appropriate bylaws, rules of procedure, and any necessary ordinance revisions to bring forward for future MMTC consideration of approval.
Excellent. So motion, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jack. Any other comments or questions? Without comments, we will do a roll call vote. Randy Warren.
Aye.
Jack Eigelman.
Aye.
Leanna Joyner.
Aye.
Bill Loftus. We might have lost Bill, maybe. I saw him pop off. Let's see. Joe Chesler.
Yes, approved.
Elise Martyr.
Aye.
Joseph Barker.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody. Okay. The next item is Merriman Avenue Road Diet Project Update.
Okay, so I know that there are several of you I've heard from over this last couple months about the status of the Merriman Avenue Road Diet, but also just the resurfacing of US 25 in general. But I think most folks here are probably most concerned with the road diet piece of the project, which, as you know, is still kind of being done, I would say, in a slow and steady manner. And we, talk to DOT often about the status of the project. And I've heard lots of frustrations about how long it's taking, why the bike lane markings haven't been finished, barrel still being in the roadway. And so I've passed all those concerns on to them. And they told me this morning that they are planning to get the pavement markings completed beginning the week of July 10th. And I'm not exactly sure why there's a delay, but it's a subcontractor of the prime contractor that's doing all the pavement markings. And so they, I guess with weather delays and such, they've had to bump that back a little bit. But my understanding is that should resume July 10th, the week of July 10th. As soon as, what I've been told is that as soon as the bike lane markings have been completed, which I believe the only things that are left are the actual bike lane symbols, and some of the locations haven't been done. once those have been done, they say that they will be able to remove the barrels from the bike lanes, and that officially those bike lanes would then be open. I've expressed to them that, you know, we'd like to get that done as soon as possible. There's obviously other markings that need to be completed, including crosswalks, and this is not just the road diet section, but the whole thing. None of the permanent pavement markings have been done south of I-240, I don't think. So other things that are still outstanding include the need for them to reinstall the loops in the pavement for the traffic signals. And they also have not finished the retiming of the traffic signals, or they refer to it as the optimization of the traffic signals. So, and that's just for the road diet section, that those retiming and optimization will take place. And until all of this is done, when they get every last piece finished, that is when they will consider the project finished, and when what I'll call the clock starts on the evaluation period. So for those of you that maybe are newer, there's a agreement that the city and NCDOT have regarding the road diet section and the before and after data collection that's going to be done, and a number of different types of data that are going to be looked at to determine, you know, what the impacts or what the positive and negative impacts might be from before and after the road diet was put in place. And it's an 18-month evaluation period, but that 18 months doesn't start until the project has been complete. So this time that we've been where they've been implementing it, but it's not completed yet, is not part of that 18-month evaluation period. So all of that is to say that it has been slow going. They recognize that, and they have been doing, you know, what they consider to be the best they can to get the project complete. And so that's the update that I wanted to pass on to you guys. Joe?
Do you really want to hear what I'm going to say?
I honestly don't think they're doing it on purpose, Joe, but I know how you feel.
I know.
It's been frustrating.
I just want to go on the record. So, all right. Yes. I want to make a request. And I realize I can't make this request from Multimodal nor from PZC, but I would like to make a request that NCDOT has to put out a public service announcement about what you just stated, which is that the evaluation does not start until this is 100% complete, that there's an 18-month evaluation period, and that until the project's 100% complete, which it is not yet, and until that evaluation period is done, then and only then is any determination made, because people are already throwing this under the bus. The jury, the court, in the minds of a lot of businesses, it has already been decided. And whether or not NCDOT did this on purpose, work is not getting done when they said it's going to be done, and it hasn't been the entire time. So, I mean, this is the biggest CF that I've ever seen. And I really think the city needs to hold DOT's feet in the fire on this one, because it's their responsibility. And I think this is looking bad on everybody else except DOT, and I hate it. So I'll leave it at that.
Understood. And I think we can work with them on that. And you know, I think even separately, like, we have not done probably enough to communicate either, and update our communications about the project as well. So that's something that we can improve and will improve. Who else? Randy?
Yeah, thanks for the update on it. One thing that concerns me still is that we've never seen a design plan for the bike lanes, which we asked for over a year now, even before, you know, it was started to be designed. because what we see out there now is not anywhere near NACTO guidelines, nowhere near. And so if they're gonna call it done, and it's not done according to national standards, that's an issue as well. And right now, it looks like that's what they're doing. And since we don't have any plans, we don't have any idea of if they're going to try to adhere to national standards. And they always default to national standards. Anytime we bring something up, they say, well, the national standard is, or the state standard is, and now they're building something that doesn't adhere to any kind of standards. And so I'd like to see that still before they call it done. And I would say that we shouldn't let them say it's done until they have bike lanes that are appropriate and safe and adhere to national standards.
Just on that note, so what I've been told, so obviously the curb to curb width of Merriman varies throughout that section. And the vehicle travel lane width, those are held at a constant. And then the areas where the bike lane is, or I'll say the outside area is larger than 5-6 feet, their intention is to keep the bike lane at a constant width, and between the bike lane and the edge of pavement or the curb would become buffered out. City has expressed that it should be the opposite of that, that anytime there's an additional width, that the buffer should be between the vehicle lane and the bike lane. They have expressed that that's not something they can do. I don't totally understand why. Their design guidelines don't seem to really talk about this issue, and I wasn't able to find anything in NCDOT's guidelines, but I mean, national guidelines, you're correct. It's clear that a buffer should be a buffer between the travel lane and the bike lane. We've talked to them about that 3-4 times and haven't really been able to change anybody's mind. We can talk to them again about it and see, because you're right, like this is the time when those final markings go down, that's what they will be. So I will make a note of that, and we'll have that conversation again.
Yeah, thanks. Again, if we just could see plans, if they could just show us what they're deciding, then we can look at the plans and say, well, here's what we think is safest, what adheres to the national guidelines versus what you're doing. But as it is now, we won't know until they say, oh, we're done. And then we'll say, well, wait a minute, and that seems like that's, again, not the right time to do that. It seems like a year ago or today is better than then. So thanks.
Yeah, they do not have a striping plan. We've asked for a striping plan and they don't have one. Which
seems ridiculous, but yeah. So thank you though for continuing to press it. I know it's not, I don't want to in any way, shape, or say that it's you or our Department of Transportation doing that, but it just, again, we, as Joe said, hold the feet into the fire, to the fire, whatever, just I mean, it's just responsible, right? Which I know that is not an assumption we should make, but yeah, just things that, you should make a plan before you do something, but.
Yeah. Don't disagree. Jack?
Yeah, I sort of just have an open question about, and thinking about the role of the MMTC. Is there anything the commission can do to help, be a little more public facing on, the benefits of the project? Because I've like Leanna, I've heard from people who are unhappy with it. Some of it is just, purely the change. It's not how it used to be, and that's upsetting. But I'm wondering if there's any role, this is a question for everyone. I wonder if there's any role the MMTC can be playing to help, support the city in the implementation of a project that makes human beings more safer in our city, which is a big issue. And I'd love to think about ways that we can do that as a commission, if possible. So it's sort of an open-ended question for everyone.
I don't know. It's a tricky one. I mean, obviously when the public meetings were happening a lot of the multimodal commission participated in those meetings and showed support there. And I think we even made motions about it back then, but it also has been a long time since there's been any conversation or any opportunity, I guess, for there to be like the commission kind of coming together and doing something. So I think there certainly isn't anything stopping us from, and you guys from doing that. I don't know what form that would take, and we could talk about that. Open to ideas. Joe.
I'll just throw out this because I actually was just considering it, and I'm glad it got brought up. I don't know if it's feasible, or I'm trying to see how to phrase it, how much heartburn the legal department would have if literally Multimodal got behind an article in the Mountain Express talking about this. Given my position, I'm not going to go writing it on my own, because I know Janice would probably have my head. I don't know if it's worth maybe Randy and myself and Dennis doing it as public people. Obviously, people are going to know, but I'm wondering if that's a way to communicate some frustration in a public setting. And I'll be interested to hear what other people think.
Well, Joe,
Randy.
every week I look in I get the Citizen Times, the actual paper, the physical paper. So, which was actually at one point was really hard to convince them that I actually wanted that. But and every week I look Wednesday and Sunday to see if there's any letters to the editor about this, because for a while, we saw a lot of them, and I'd say 75% or so were anti-drone diet. So I'm always relieved actually when I don't see those. So it's kind of a two-edged sword. I think if we did do that, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, because I think we need to do, it'd be great if we could do something. I don't know if we need to or can do, but it'd be great to do something to let people know what's going on. But my expectation is that if we did do that, or if something came out like that, then we'd see again a flood of, letters to the editor about anti-bike lane sentiment too, which I don't know if that helps or hurts us, because it definitely gives us our side of the story out there, which I think is important for people to know. But then there's people that we can't ever convince that this is a good idea, and they won't convince it, until after, some people will afterwards, they'll say like, oh, I guess it worked out fine or whatever. But anyway, so it's just, yeah, I mean, when we bring it up again to the public's consciousness and people start saying bad things about it again, so it's double-edged. So it's a conundrum for sure. And the whole thing is, and a lot of it, like I know, Joe, we talked about before, has been facilitated by NCDOT too. So that makes it even harder yet, but I don't think there's a silver bullet for sure.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I would say even given the current state of the project, which has been kind of in the same state for a long time, the level of ire has dropped significantly. And, we've seen some blips, and there's, like, I know a group of business owners that have expressed frustration. So, I think every bike project that I've ever been a part of has had this period of transition. And this is unfortunately been like kind of a drawn out transition because of the way that it's been rolled out. But I do think that things will calm down eventually, I hope. And, we've also got other bike lane projects that we're going to be continuing to bring forward, right? So, including College and Patton, which is we're working kind of with some of the business owners right now to resolve and try to solve some issues and get into a better position to bring that forward and have it approved. So there's more projects to come where we'll have the same kind of concerns. Joseph.
I think Elise raised her hand before me.
Oh yeah,
Hey.
Elise, sorry.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the update, Jessica. That's more information than I've heard about this, like more complete and comprehensive. And this obviously isn't directed at you, but I'm disappointed in this, this whole situation here. Is a very contentious, heavily debated proposal initially, and it was kind of like we really needed this to go exactly according to plan to help get more buy-in from the public. Because there are a huge number of people out there that until they see this, until they see the proof of better safety and that the speeds aren't decreased, they're not going to get on board with it. And so it's really disappointing that it's rolled out the way that it has, especially with the other projects that are similar, that are trying to kind of come in on the coattails of it. As far as kind of informing the public, like Joe was suggesting, I wonder if maybe just an information piece that kind of includes what you mentioned might be helpful, because I think the last news I heard, and I get Mountain Express, I get Citizen Times, I get AVL Watchdog, I get all the things. And the last piece that I heard in the news was that the semi-permanent road markings were becoming not visible. And the reason that they were semi-permanent in the first place is because winter time isn't an appropriate time to do the permanent markings, which to me is like, well, then why did we start this project in winter time? I don't know. There's just like a lot of gaps and a lot of fumbles. And I think some more information to the public would be helpful. And I'm looking at the project page for the city, and the last update was December 5th of 2022 on the project page. So I'm kind of at a loss too, as far as what can we do to help get people on board with this. I'm glad that the evaluation period is not started yet. And I really hope that once it does get complete, and hopefully it will be completed well to the right standards, that we will get the data to demonstrate to people that this really is safer for the people in our community. And hopefully they also agree that saving people's lives are worthwhile for a 15-second decrease in your travel time. I hope that we'll get people on board with that.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. Joseph?
So it was brought up a couple of times about signal timings, and I don't know the whole history on the project, but if the construction is stretching out as long as it is, I find it interesting that interim signal timings have not been implemented to improve operations in the reduced section. You've taken away 2 lanes, you have less throughput, you need to change that signal timing. And just from my perspective also, just corridor cohesion is really important to operations and capacity. So this drawn out construction is causing a problem, because you have a section that's the old layout and you have a section that's the new layout, and there's this meeting point that is just becoming a choke point for the corridor. So from a traffic engineer's perspective, I would say if they could push for some new timings on the section that's already been improved, that could maybe appease some of the business owners along that stretch.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think that they did adjust one signal, but I can't tell you which one and when, but I will, when we meet with them again, we'll discuss that more. I know that they want to do, a full-fledged optimization that they also want to make sure takes place after they have, after the UNCEA back in session.
Yeah, well, that would be ideal.
Yeah, but in the interim, like you're saying, it would be nice to have.
It's pretty common in projects that involve signal changes to implement temporary timing plans for maintenance of traffic. So I would be shocked if they hadn't at least considered this. I don't know if the project was supposed to go a lot faster. It's obviously dragging out, but it's definitely something to consider now that there's been so much pushback and people are upset. I mean, I've driven it at the wrong time since this has started, and it's not fun. I don't disagree. So I think you could improve the throughput a little bit with some new timings. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Hey, any other comments on that one? Not, I can just jump into the next one if you'd like, Dennis. Bike share study. Is that right? Yes. So this one we keep plugging along slowly but surely. Our transportation planner, Haley, has been working on this, and she has drafted a, I'm calling it kind of an executive summary that summarizes the changes that we're making to that original draft, since that draft document is pretty old at this point. And what we're going to do is we're going to meet with, in July, we're planning to meet with various internal departments to the city to just give them an update on where we're at, what we're going to change, reassure some folks that right now the recommendations are to not implement e-scooter sharing companies. But we want to have those conversations with like APD, legal, and other departments that have a relationship to this plan from several years ago, and just get that in front of them first before we push it forward to you guys and council. And what I want to do is bring that executive summary of the changes to you guys, and just make sure you guys have eyes on it and are okay with everything we've changed before we do ultimately take it to council. So I'm hoping to have the internal conversations with the departments completed in July, and then my goal would be for August, we would bring that revised draft bike share study back to you guys for like the final okay. Even though I know you've already said, do it, get it out of here, we don't want to see it again. I'd like to still make sure that everybody, especially since we have so many new folks, I want to kind of bring everybody up to speed. At least.
So is this a proposal to perform a study, or has the study been done?
So there was a study started and not completed. And it was started in like 2018, 2019. And it was a study of bike share, and then scooter share got added to the study kind of late in the game because e-scooters were becoming more commonplace. And then we had one of those companies drop a bunch of scooters in Asheville. So, and then the council said, we just can't deal with this right now, the study, and paused it. So it's essentially a study that's like 4 years old now. A lot of things have changed in the industry, and we are trying to bring that study back, but also update it and make bike share be, you guys hear me still? Yeah, make bike share still be the primary thing that we want to move forward and press pause on scooters.
Okay, so I'm sorry, just like what's the next actionable step that we're at right now?
So we are trying to redraft the study and bring it up to 2023 and change those recommendations. And we're going to bring all of our internal departments up to speed on it and make sure they're good to go with the recommendations. Then we'll bring the draft back to you guys to approve. and then we would take it to council for adoption.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Questions? Anyone else? And we'll do it when we bring it back. We'll do a more thorough explanation of why we're here, why it's taken so long, and where we're at. And I think that's all I have on my update
Joe,
list, Dennis.
Just real quick, Jessica, and I mean, I know you know this, and this is partially because this may or may not come back before I'm gone, and at least for the new members, that the e-scooter, the revision on the e-scooters, it's not going to be e-scooter sharing, but we do still want to get rid of what is now still a ban on personal e-scooters in the city, because technically that is still illegal. Even though APD isn't enforcing it, I still hate the fact that it's technically illegal. So I just want to make sure that that is still there.
Yes, that is one of the things that we're changing in the recommendations, is to say that would be the next step as far as e-scooters or e-devices goes. That would be the next step, is to make it legal for private people to own their own device. And then the recommendation is maybe someday, if y'all want to have e-scooter share, we can think about it in the future, but let's get those other things done first.
All right. Excellent. So my outlaw scooter gang will no longer be outlaw, which is makes it a little bit less cool, but you know.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was hoping my last, day at P&Z, I could get arrested, going there on an e-scooter.
Okay, so we're set through that list, Jessica? Okay, great. Please note the committee assignments, the July 26th update, and our important documents. If you have anything for agenda, of course, just float it on to the chair or Jessica, Randy, and we can get things added to the list. Just a real quick, without any further comment, this is my last meeting, so thank you very much. It was an honor to serve with all of you. I really had a great time. I enjoyed all the work that we did. So thanks so much. I appreciate it. And without other comment, we can take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Dennis.
Hey, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, for sure. And normally when we went in person, we would make some more public acknowledgement and maybe even give you something. So, but let's virtually hand you appreciation for all the work that you've done, and you've been a great chair, and we just appreciate, and the city appreciates, and the citizens who don't even know all the work that we do and you've done specifically should have a sense of appreciation if they were aware of it, I'm sure. So don't it's easy to feel unappreciated in the stuff that we do, and if we can lessen that feeling of unappreciation a little bit, please accept that, Dennis. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. I'm sure I'll see you all around town too. I'm still gonna be out there on my scooter, my bike, and walking and everything. So thanks so much. I appreciate it. All in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? All right. We're adjourned.
Thanks, Dennis.
See you, buddy.